So Glenn Beck is worried about the lack of male role models. And luckily for him, he believes that there is one role model left for men to look up to, and he discusses it on his show. Watch.
Masculinity is supposed to be a bad thing now. It's a toxic thing. It's terrible, and we're being told that all the time. Mm-hmm. So,
I think this is why Donald Trump is so successful, and why he has connected with so many people. Mm-hmm. Think how many. I mean, there are no examples of men being men. Okay, mm-hmm. James Bond. That's it. A movie. Okay, there's no male role models. Would you agree with that?
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay, so Donald Trump, here's a guy who marries a supermodel.
Right.
Is like, yeah, I can make it with any model I want. He's over the top, mm-hmm. but he fights back. He doesn't flinch.
He doesn't take any garbage from anybody.
He is the almost cartoon of an alpha dog.
Yeah, he is.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I think because we have taken alpha dogs and shot them all, when he comes to the table, there's a lot of guys who are out there going, yeah, damn right.
That's why he was elected, isn't it?
Right. And a lot of young guys that are looking at him almost as a father figure.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I think that's
a huge part of his appeal. It is absolutely happening.
No, it's not. Oh, they took all the alpha dogs and they shot them. No, they didn't. What are you talking about? No. Okay, so there is this entire false narrative, right? That, oh my God, masculinity is terrible and it's toxic. No, it's not. Masculinity is fine. But there gets to a point where there is a certain thing called toxic masculinity. Now, that's, of course, when you dominate over people, when you treat people deeply unfairly, when you become someone like an incel that starts taking out your frustrations on women. That's toxic. Normal masculinity is absolutely fine. And that, of course, is being strong, right? Being strong, and here's the thing about masculinity, right? So people who are masculine and people who are strong don't have to run around telling everybody that they're strong, right? Don't have to go around telling everybody how much of a manly man they are. Oh, I'm such a man. No, people who are masculine and strong don't have to do that. So that's the idea that is toxic. That's not the toxic masculinity. Going in and being a jerk to people, being a douchebag and an asshole, that makes you toxic, right? And going around thinking that everyone owes you things, like women owe you their bodies because you're a man, that's toxic. That's toxic. And speaking of Donald Trump, he is an embodiment of that kind of toxic masculinity, right? But that's the kind of stuff that Glenn Beck and some of these Trumpists, well, they love. Because they're like, yeah, I'm owed, I can go up and grab women if I want because I'm a real man. No, that doesn't make you a real man. That makes you a child. That makes you somebody who doesn't respect other people and their personal space. That's stuff that Donald Trump did. Donald Trump does not respect his women. He hasn't respected any of his wives. Cheated on somebody with a porn star. His wife wasn't even in the same room when his son was born, Barron. So, no, you want to call that a man? Is that your male role model? Is that somebody you really want to take after? No, dude. Not at all. If you're any kind of real man, you would look at somebody like that who complains and whines all the time that, oh my God, well, everything's so unfair. Everybody's after me. Everybody's coming after me. They're attacking me nonstop. No collusion. Witch hunt. You look at somebody like that and you think that's a man. You ain't a man. You got some self-reflection to do, boy. And let me tell you that. All right. So, that said, let's talk about Glenn Beck and how much of a man he is, right? So Glenn Beck, before he put on the MAGA hat, right? He actively campaigned against Donald Trump in 2016. And he even got together with Full Frontal host Samantha Bee to go after Trumpism, right? Fast forward to 2019. Actually, before that, when he decided to put on the MAGA hat, and I'm going to tell you why he put on that MAGA hat, by the way. Now he's like, oh, Donald Trump's a father figure. He's such a daddy to everybody. I mean, they all look up to him. No, you know who looks up to him? The white supremacists, deeply insecure people. The incels, super insecure people. Let me tell you what, a lot of us, for quite a long time as men, have been involuntarily celibate. That doesn't mean we get together with our friends and bitch about it and blame other people. That's not what being a man is. Being a man is being better than that. Is finding out what's wrong with me. What am I doing wrong to, make it so that I'm unattractive, and then fixing it. And then fixing yourself and making yourself a better person. That's what being a man is. So, as far as Glenn Beck is concerned, he's not a man. Because at the first opportunity, he put on that MAGA hat and it's like, yes, daddy. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now, the reason, of course, is money. I think, over 90 is a recent poll. Like 93% of Republicans have a favorable opinion of Donald Trump. That's his audience. That's Glenn Beck's audience. And he's like, yeah, the money ain't there. Being anti-Trump as a Republican or as a so-called libertarian, right? It ain't there. He's got that audience. He wants to pander to that audience. Why? Because they got money and they'll give him money. So he puts on that hat, debases himself every single day talking about this garbage so he can get a paycheck. And why? It's because the Blaze is literally a rolling dumpster fire that was hemorrhaging money. Right-wingers talk about how, we're so good at running businesses. We're fantastic at running businesses. Look how great we are. But it turns out, unless you have a billionaire daddy behind you, which I believe Glenn Beck had in the Mercer family at first, until they pulled out. And I'm not entirely sure on the Mercers. It could have been Foster Freeze or one of those shady right-wing billionaires, Koch brothers, right? That used to be behind Glenn Beck. Not anymore. Unless you have one of those guys, then you're destined to fail because the audience isn't there. The audience is overwhelmingly white, old, and dying. It's a small audience. So it doesn't surprise me at all that the Blaze was literally on fire. Well, not literally, but figuratively on fire, because it, there was nothing to it. It was a failure. It flamed out. Now, that said, so we saw the video. Now I want to get to some of the reaction on social media, and you'll love this, right? Now, Robbie Couch tweeted out, I feel like Glenn Beck explaining in earnest why Trump was one of the last male role models does more to highlight how ridiculous our perceptions of gender norms are than any liberal take on toxic masculinity. LOL. Thanks, Glenn. Yeah, well, that is a good point. The unbearable lightness being says, I see Glenn Beck's efforts to reinvent himself as a never-Trump woke conservative are going swimmingly. Heath says, the absolute expert on role models, Glenn Beck, has logged on. The Real TM says, Glenn Beck, heard your comments about the Trump being the last male role model. Trump is the epitome of toxic masculinity, as I was saying earlier, which, by the way, is not synonymous with plain old masculinity. There are lots of good male role models. Trump is the antithesis of that and a warning to our youth. Now, look, Glenn Beck can't seem to find any positive male role models, right? Well, I got a couple. These are old school. You guys don't know who these guys are. Mr. Rogers. And Mr. Rogers was a literal Republican, but he was one of the best male role models that you could find. He always treated people with respect. That is a role model. What about Bob Ross? Bob Ross, the guy who paints stuff, right? He paints you some happy trees. If you're feeling down, he will do something for you. He'll paint happy trees and happy clouds. That's a role model. That's a good role model. That is what a man is supposed to be. Someone who, takes into account other people's feelings, right? And actually helps other people, who gives of himself for others, and actually fights for justice and equality. That's a role model. That's a real man. Now, that's going to be ironic here as I get into the next comment, because the next person the next person's comment that I'm going to read is somebody who has shown that he is not exactly the best role model, and this is Joe Walsh. Now, Joe Walsh, as I said before, he was former Congressman Joe Walsh, kind of got busted for not paying his child support. But even he says, if being an utterly dishonest, proudly ignorant, off-the-charts narcissistic bully is a role model for men, then sure, Donald Trump is a role model. Donald Trump is no role model. Gosh, I hope you understand that. And just in case that sarcasm wasn't clear enough. Now, look, maybe Joe Walsh actually went around and started paying his child support. And if so, fantastic, right? There's more. Larry DeMeo says, when I think about whose opinion and value on the topic of male role models, Glenn Beck is right up there with the Catholic Church. Ooh. Josh Stack points out something that I talked about earlier. Glenn Beck, role models don't brag about grabbing women's genitals, lie 22 times a day, or over 9,000 times. It's over 9,000 since he, won election. Stokes racial animus, cozy up to murderous dictators, rant and rave against accountability, insult the media, cheat on all his wives, and pay off mistresses. See, there's another thing, right? You know what a real man does when he does something wrong? Takes responsibility. Donald Trump has never taken responsibility for anything in his entire life. Oh no, it's their fault. It's always somebody else's fault when it comes to Donald Trump. If something doesn't work out, it's your fault. And that's of course why he doesn't get involved and does his own stuff. He orders people to do things, sometimes impossible things. And when they can't do it, it's your fault. It's your fault it didn't get done. No, why don't you do it yourself? Because you know it's impossible. And you never do anything by yourself, on your own. You've never done a damn thing in your life. And you know why? It's because you've had your daddy do everything for you. Not a good role model. Terrible role model. There's more. Sahil Desai says, so Trumpservatives like Glenn Beck don't recognize Jesus as a role model. Figures. See, that's another good point. Glenn Beck is supposed to be a Christian. Supposed to be all into Christianity, right? Well, what did Jesus do? Allegedly, of course. Well, in the stories, he gave up all his possessions, hung out with the lepers and the prostitutes, and helped them, restored sight to the blind, actually helped people. Donald Trump, did he do any of that? No, Donald Trump has only ever been interested in helping himself. And Glenn Beck is only interested in riding the coattails of the conservative movement so he can make a few bucks, so that his the blaze doesn't literally burn up. More. Sierra says, modeling ourselves after so-called tough guys got us mass shootings, Me Too, and a fascist administration. Maybe what the world needs is fewer male role models. No, I actually disagree with that. I think we need better male role models. And as I mentioned before, Bob Ross, Mr. Rogers, those are fantastic role models, and there are plenty of great role models out there as well. I mean, a lot of people can come up with a lot of great men out there today who are respectful, who are great people, who embody what real male role models should be. I mean, I think, the guy who plays Captain America, Chris Evans, and looks like a great role model to me. And there are a lot of, fantastic people. And the thing is, again, masculinity is fine, 100% fine. But then there's also toxic masculinity. And that is not fine. The toxic kind, of course, again, not being a good person, hiding your feelings, abusing women, taking advantage of people, abusing children. So that's toxic. That's toxic. And I think all of us should be able to agree that that kind of stuff is toxic. And we need to make sure that we don't allow other men to be that way, to be that kind of people, right? So now, Glenn Beck, back to him, right? To point out, just to kind of put the end cap on this one. The kind of man that Glenn Beck is, not a real man. He went from, again, never Trump, right? He's destroying the country. What he's saying is really terrible. We need to stop him. He went from that to, I'm Trump's bitch. That's the least man thing to do. No, look, if you're going to stick with your convictions, do so. Don't just switch up just to get paid. And that's what this is. The Republican Party loves Donald Trump, and Glenn Beck is just trying to get a paycheck. And that's pathetic and sad. Now, finally, one more thing here. Now, the reason that this segment is probably going over really, really well with the conservative crowd is that, look, this plays into their authoritarianism and their victimhood. Again, another thing that a man doesn't do is play the victim all the time, right? So this is that victim of men are under attack. Men are under attack. Now, are there significant issues when it comes to men? Absolutely. There are issues where, look, men don't have an equal shake, right? Where we are, for example, raised to be stoic and to actually not be honest with how we feel about things. And also, when it comes to even legal issues like divorce and court and, I was going to say ownership, but that's not the right word. Custody of children, right? So those are significant issues where men do lag behind. Men also lag behind in education, higher education. So there's some really big issues that are facing the male population. There's suicide. There's drug use among men. There's, of course, the stereotypes and tropes of men being stupid and all that stuff, right? So I'm not out here saying that there aren't issues with men. That again, right? You also say that there are way more issues of equality facing women too. And so as a society, maybe we need to look at both, and we should try to get both on an equal footing. And that's the issue here. And so that's what feminism is supposed to be. I know it's been a poisoned word now because there are people that will take the most radical militant feminists and paint the whole entire movement as that single picture. And of course, there is the right-wing outrage machine, which either makes up stories or takes the most ridiculous stories and blows them up in social media and says, oh, this is what all feminists are about. They all hate men and are terrible people. No, dude, that's not the truth. There's probably one or two people like that. But in reality, most feminists, most people actually do agree that, hey, we got issues with men, we got issues with women. Let's raise them both up so that we can all be treated equally. So, but as far as Trump goes, look, and the authoritarianism, right? Republicans, conservatives are authoritarians, as I said before. They see an authority figure, they see somebody who is meaner than anyone else, and they say, oh, that's it. That's my daddy. That's the situation right here. Literally calling Trump a father figure. He is the daddy. He is the, the big male figure, the alpha male, he said, the alpha dog, right? He shouldn't be considered one. He lies all the time, whines about the investigations, calls himself a victim, but for some reason that resonates with people who also want to feel like the victim. And let me tell you, when other people get more rights, it doesn't erase yours. This is not a zero-sum game, right? This is an issue where we can all become more equal and have a better society. And it's just really funny how the so-called alpha males tend to act a lot like betas around an authority figure. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation, set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent, progressive media.